Thank you for watching QTV with the news. My name is Diana SUMBWE. In our top stories, the increase in mini meal prices has resulted in the annual rate of inflation for the month of August increasing to 9.3%. Government has signed a $3.8 million United States dollars memorandum of understanding with the United Nations Development Program on the creation of a conducive governance environment. And UPND leader Hakainde Hichilema says Zambians should get concerned with what is going on in the country. And now the news in detail. The annual rate of inflation for the month of August increased to 9.3% from 8.3% in July 2019, mainly attributed to the increase in price of mili meal. Speaking during a media briefing for the August 2019 release of the monthly bulletin, Central Statistical Office Assistant Director Social Statistics Ivan Sikanyati says this means that on average prices of goods and services increased by 9.3% between August 2018 and August 2019. Mr. Sikanyati has attributed the increase in the annual inflation rate to price increases in food items such as mili meal, maize grain and local rice. He states that the year-on-year food inflation rate for August 2019 was recorded at 10.3% compared to 9.3% recorded in July 2019, indicating an increase of 1 percentage points. Mr. Sikanyati says the total 9.3% annual inflation rate recorded in August 2019, food and non-alcoholic beverages accounted for 4.8 percentage points.
In terms of the overall contribution to the 9.3% that we indicated earlier, we see that prices in Lusaka, inflation in Lusaka was at the contribution for Lusaka was at 2.7%, followed by Copperbelt province, and the least was Northwestern and on 0.3%. So if you add all this up, they should add up to 9.3%, which is the monthly inflation rate. In terms of month-on-month inflation rate, this is the inflation rate from July to August. The month-on-month inflation rate for August 2019 was recorded at 0.7%, indicating an increase of 0.2 percentage points from 0.5% recorded in July 2019. This observable increase in the month-on-month inflation rate is mainly attributed to the prices that we have already discussed on breakfast meal, raw meal, and maize grain. So the month-on-month food inflation rate for August was recorded at 1.2% compared to 0.4% in July 2019.
And Mr. Sikanyati says Zambia recorded an increase in trade deficit by 27.0% from 619 million kwacha in June 2019. He adds that the country also recorded a decline in exports.
Remember, the trade data is we have got a month lag, so we are referring to June instead of we are referring to July. The exports decreased by 15% from 7,993 million in June to 6,795.4 million in July. So this decrease in the value of export is mainly attributed to the decrease in the exports of intermediate goods and consumer goods, which decreased by 15.9 and 19.8% respectively. So imports decreased by 12% from 8,612 million in June to 7,581 million in July. So the net effect of this is what we obtain as a trade deficit. As you can see, for June it was 619 million, and this has gone up to 786 million in July.
Government has signed a $3.8 million 55,600 United States dollars memorandum of understanding with the United Nations Development Program to effectively implement activities under Pillar 5 of the 7th National Development Plan 2017 to 2021 on the creation of a conducive governance environment. The aim of the program is to effectively contribute towards the progressive realization of human rights and improve access to justice for all in Zambia. Justice Minister Given Luwinda says the expected impact of this program is to have an improved human rights and access to a justice environment where citizens will have a greater ability to claim their rights. Speaking during the signing ceremony, Mr. Luwinda says in order to achieve this, there will be need to review amendment of the even enact relevant laws, formulate relevant policies, the development and implement the sensitization campaign strategy, among others. He says that this project requires all stakeholders, including civil society organizations, to work together, stressing that the ministry cannot do this work alone.
Majority rule and minority rights also characterize constitutional democracy, meaning that the majority rules while respecting and protecting the fundamental rights of individuals and the minority. The PF government has been very focused on resolutely upholding and enhancing human rights issues. You may recall, my dear colleagues, that in 2016, this government, the government of Edgar Chagwa, wanted to enhance the Bill of Rights through a referendum to include cultural, social, and economic rights in the Bill of Rights. However, the referendum did not meet the required threshold prescribed in the Constitution. This opportunity was lost, and I need to say, lost it.
Speaking at the same event, UNDP Acting Resident Representative Roland Seri has reaffirmed the UNDP's commitment to working with the state actors, civil society and other development stakeholders to collectively address the challenges hindering the progress and efforts towards the promotion of human rights and access to justice in Zambia. Mr. Seri says government institutions such as the Zambia Police Service, judiciary and other partners such as the Human Rights Commission will also be targeted so as to increase coordination among the duty bearers in response to the needs and demands of the citizens.
Very hard. Why is this important for Zambia? I will offer just two main reasons. Firstly, this is not a simple fulfillment of international obligation, but a great opportunity to take stock of the state of human rights protection within the country for the purpose of policy planning and implementation. Secondly, it helps the country identify problems and shortcomings in its approach to the implementation of the treaties. After months of intensive work and analysis, we have now reached the point where the government of the Republic of Zambia and UNDP have signed this important project documents.
Chief Government Spokesperson Dora Silia says it is unbecoming for some politicians to use palatable language against the president each time they want to put across a message. In an apparent reference to the video that has gone viral where deregistered NDC leader SUMBWE allegedly used defamatory language against the president, Ms. Silia says there are a lot of Bemba proverbs that Mr. Kambwili could have used instead of allegedly insulting the sitting president in such a manner. Speaking at a media briefing, Ms. Silia has called on Zambians to reject politicians and individuals who are in the habit of ridiculing the presidency. Ms. Silia, who is also Information and Broadcasting Services Minister, says Zambians should start shaming those that have opted to use insults as a way of communicating.
So this is the appeal from government, that we hope that while the country has been provided with such a huge opportunity in terms of internet, let us use it to make ourselves better people. Because, and I keep saying, if I am going to employ somebody today, I'm just going to check their electronic footprint. If I find all they do is post pictures with alcohol, how will I employ them? So we have to be careful how we use this internet. And because I think that some of even adults in our society, like politicians, are abusing this video making by insulting, even the young people are getting confused. So it's very important that we remind ourselves, and as government, we hope that you, the media, can help us. That let us shame those who think that insulting is communication. It is not. Let us shame those who think that insulting is communication. It is not.
And Ms. Silia says government has not given its position on the National Dialogue Forum NDF resolutions. She says government will only give its position after the Parliamentary Select Committee presents its report to the House. The chief government spokesperson has since encouraged stakeholders to make submissions to the Parliamentary Select Committee, which will be receiving submissions from 2nd September to 27 September 2019.
I know there's also a day when Parliament will leave it to the public to go and make submissions. Thereafter, Parliament committee will do a report for Parliament. When that report comes to Parliament, then government will give its position on the NDF bill, on the constitution. That is the procedure. And I am happy that people have been debating this matter. Government is very pleased that people have been debating this matter. Like I said, some of the opinions are uninformed. It's very clear that people have not read the bill because they're even talking about things that are not in the bill. And even some of the things that are on the bill, they're alleging that this is government. Government has not given any position. Because before, what would have happened is government would have met as cabinet, given a white paper as a position of government, then would have taken it to Parliament for debate. But we said, no, let us be inclusive. Let the people debate, come out with a position, then take it to Parliament, then government will give its position.
Patriots for Economic Progress President Sean Tembo claims he has information of a ploy to keep defunct NDC President SUMBWE in detention without being taken to court or being given police bond until next week. Mr. Tembo has described the move as totally unacceptable, which must be condemned by all well-meaning citizens. Mr. Tembo, who visited Dr. Kambwili at Lusaka Central Police Station where he's being detained, says there is no sound legal basis for the continued detention of the NDC leader. He says Dr. Kambwili's continued incarceration without being taken to court or being given police bond constitute extrajudicial punishment and must not be allowed in a constitutional republic.
Spirits, although we are disappointed of the fact that he continues to be incarcerated in detention, he has been denied police bond and he has not been taken to court. The stories that we are hearing are that there is an intention to detain him up to Monday of next week, which is totally unacceptable because basically this constitutes extrajudicial punishment against an accused person, and that cannot be allowed in a democratic dispensation such as ours. So we appeal to the police as well as the people at the National Prosecutions Authority to expedite the taking to court of Honorable SUMBWE because he needs to be given a fair hearing, basically. Thank you, Spirit.
Jubilee debt campaign of the UK has linked the delay by the International Monetary Fund, IMF, to bail out Zambia to fears that the country might use the money to service its external debt. Head of Policy Tim Jones says his organization thinks that Zambia can only stand the chance of sealing a financial bailout with the IMF if it restructures its debt. Mr. Jones has told QTV News that it is already clear from the delay that the IMF cannot bail out a country for the purposes of paying its debt. He says Zambia therefore needs to find ways of restructuring its debt before engaging the fund for a financial bailout.
The key thing I point out about an IMF loan is that if it is into a situation where Zambia has got high debt payments, the IMF money will just be used to pay off lenders and pay interest to lenders. None of that money will come into Zambia. So if there was to be an IMF bailout, IMF rules actually are for a high debt country like Zambia, there would need to be a debt restructuring. And so that should be used as an opportunity to say the IMF says we need a debt restructuring, we need to reduce this debt down to a sustainable level. So that is one of the steps that needs to be taken to be able to have an IMF programme.
UPND leader Hakainde Hichilema says Zambians should get concerned with what is going on in the country. Speaking to journalists at the Anti-Corruption Commission offices in Lusaka, where he went to deliver what he termed as a special message of national interest, Mr. Hichilema says as a citizen he is concerned with various issues happening in the country, hence his visit to the ACC offices. He has reminded Zambians that they only have one country. Mr. Hichilema says those serving the people of Zambia should take away nothing that belongs to the Zambian people. He states that the Anti-Corruption Commission has been given the mandate on behalf of the people of Zambia to protect national assets. And Mr. Hichilema has demanded that police should take defunct National Democratic Congress President Chishimba Kambwili to court if they cannot give him police bond. He says anyone is innocent until proven guilty by the court. Therefore, Mr. Kambwili should be given police bond. Mr. Ichilema states that the law is being abused by the government because citizens are quiet. He says citizens have a right to protect each other, adding that what is happening in the country is a situation where the state has become a monster. The Zambia National Farmers Union ZNFU says mealie meal prices will drop automatically once the cost of producing the main raw material, which is maize, is reduced, followed by lowering the cost of doing business in the country. In a statement welcoming Acting President Inongewina's intervention and restating equivocally the government policy on maize and mealie meal business operations in the country, ZNFU President Jervis Zimba says his union will collaborate with other stakeholders and government to find ways of improving the affordability of mealie meal. Mr. Zimba says farmers are very happy with government in that the maize business from farm level and throughout the value chain is set to continue to operate undisturbed and rewarded appropriately. He says the statement by the acting president should go a long way in restoring confidence in all the players, and farmers can continue selling as the crop marketing continues and begins to plan in all earnest for the upcoming farming season. Mr. Zimba has assured the government that farmers will always respond and grow maize with the right incentives in place. He states that farmers are also excited at the possibility of formalizing exports of maize and mealie meal into the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, as this will pave way for favorable expansion of maize growing in the country. The ZNFU president says all the categories of farmers in the country can grow maize, but that the limiting factor has always been lack of access to larger markets to ensure that maize is grown profitably to mitigate against collapse of prices. National Development Planning Permanent Secretary Chola Chabala says Zambia has made tremendous progress in narrowing key developmental inequalities, especially for women and young people. Speaking during the national commemoration of the World Population Day, marking 25 years of the International Conference on Population and Development, dubbed Accelerating the Promise, Mr. Chabala says this is evidenced by the representation in Parliament, which has increased from less than 10% of women between 2001 and 2015 to 26% in 2016. Mr. Chabala, however, says poverty and youth unemployment remain the biggest challenges the country is facing. He says Zambia considers the implementation of the International Conference on Population and Development Program of Action as essential for the realization of the country's aspiration of becoming a prosperous middle-income country by the year 2030. Mr. Chabala says this year's theme gives government a chance to review and look at the strategies towards effective implementation of the unfinished business of the International Conference on Population and Development Program of Action.
And this comes out of the realization that people are both agents and beneficiaries of development. Ladies and gentlemen, the 1994 International Conference on Population and Development Program of Action, adopted by 179 countries, including Zambia, was groundbreaking, which articulated a bold vision about the relationship between population, development, and individual well-being. It provided a comprehensive overview of the multiple linkages between population and development, with issues that are important and relevant today as they were in 1994.
Speaking at the same event, United Nations Population Fund UNFPA representative Gift Malunga expressed concern that despite considerable gains over the past 25 years, many people, especially women and girls, have continued to be left out and are still unable to realize the promise of Cairo. And United Nations Resident Coordinator Dr. Kumba Ma Gadio says with 68% of the world population projected to live in urban areas by 2050, sustainable development and climate change will increasingly depend on the successful management of urban growth.
We'll see more women dying while giving birth. We'll see more unintended pregnancies. We'll see more unsafe abortions. We'll see more pregnant women, girls dropping out of school. So the potential of individuals and society is wasted, and more hunger and more poverty, and we do not want to regress. This year's World Population Day calls for global attention to unfinished business at the Cairo ICPD conference. Despite progress in lowering maternal mortality and unintended pregnancies, many challenges remain. Around the world, we are seeing pushback on women's rights, including on essential health services. Issues related to pregnancy are still the leading cause of death among girls aged 15 to 19.
The Center for Trade Policy and Development, CTPD, has projected that low liquidity in the economy is likely to worsen as the kwacha's exchange rate depreciates. CTPD Tax Justice Program Officer Ibrahim Kamara says with a depreciated exchange rate, debt servicing by government will become expensive. Mr. Kamara tells QTV News that this means that government will be paying more than it is currently paying on debt servicing. He states that it is inevitable for the government to continue implementing austerity measures amid this low liquidity. Mr. Kamara says CTPD's advice to government is that it considers restructuring its expenditure as a measure to improve liquidity in the economy. He says government should reduce expenditure on non-productive areas.
Currently, 1 in about 4 of government expenditure is going to go on debt servicing. The situation is likely to get to worsen further as the exchange rate depreciates. So you find that it becomes more expensive for government to service its debts, okay, because the exchange rate is depreciating. So what this entails is that government is going to be spending more. In the 2019 national budget, we planned for about 26% of government expenditure to go towards debt servicing. But if the kwacha depreciates further, external debt servicing will be impacted, and this is going to increase on the amount of debt, money that government is allocating towards debt servicing. So these are some of the challenges that the nation is facing in terms of improving liquidity and in terms of implementing austerity measures. I think it's unfortunate that we have to go through this route. Austerity measures currently cannot be, it's inevitable that we have to go through this austerity measure, but I think also it starts from government. Government has to be, austerity measures have to begin with government. In terms of expenditure, I think government also has to reduce on the way it is, spending the money in terms of areas where
Non-Government Organizations Registration Board Chairperson Chanda Nonde has threatened to deregister civil society organizations operating against the guidelines and rules. Mr. Nonde has accused some NGO leaders of imposing their decisions on the Zambian people about the proposed amendments to the Constitution of Zambia Bill number 10. He says that these NGO leaders are behaving like political players, especially on the infamous Constitution Bill number 10 of 2019. Mr. Nonde says that civil society organizations should focus on providing civic education so that citizens can make their own sound decisions for the benefit of the country. He states that the civic education must be a continuous process for a well-informed citizenry on matters of national interests.
Our civil society organizations have a role to play, of course, but I think somewhere, somehow, they are overstepping in that, when there's a constitutional amendment like this one, we expect that our people have been educated, they have received the civic education from civil society, government, and the other stakeholders. And when an amendment like this one comes, let it come from the people so that the people own it. But what we begin to see now is that some civil society leaders are beginning to impose their position on citizens. And that, I think, is not very good. We are not creating a healthy environment. A healthy environment is where citizens themselves own the process, they speak out, you give them the pros and cons, and let them choose. And what they choose is what you call.
Meanwhile, Council of NGOs in Zambia Chairperson McDonald Chipenzi says the Non-Governmental Organizations Registration Board Chairperson is breaching the Constitution he is supposed to understand, defend and protect from being violated by warning those exercising their constitutional right by holding opinions and views on Bill number 10. Mr. Chipenzi says Mr. Nonde has no powers whatsoever to stop any NGO registered under his board or not from holding an opinion, view, a say, and to propagate such to the public, people, or class of persons. Government says it is working towards addressing capacity and response gaps identified in the 2019 to 2020 Recovery Action Plan to be launched by Vice President Nongewina soon. Disaster Management and Mitigation Unit DMMU National Coordinator Chanda Kabwe has since requested India to help Zambia in capacity building in agriculture, pests, livestock, disease control and disaster risk management. According to a statement issued by First Secretary Present Tourism at the Zambian Mission in India, Bangwe Navile, Mr. Kabwe says he's impressed to note that the Indian National Disaster Management Authority is responding to disasters effectively because of a training institute which Zambia wants to take advantage of. Mr. Kabwe said this when he and Zambia's High Commissioner to India, Judith Kabejimpanga, called on India's Ministry of External Affairs Joint Secretary for East and Southern Africa, ESA, Nina Malhotra. He says Zambia is interested in technical cooperation and capacity building for enhanced disaster management and sharing of best practices. And India's Ministry of External Affairs Joint Secretary for East and Southern Africa, ESA, Nina Malhotra, says short Indian government-sponsored courses can be tailor-designed to provide training to Zambians' training requirements once needs are specified in a formal request. She says Zambia should formally identify an already existing institution which could be used for teaching disaster and risk management to enhance disaster management and preparedness or build a new one. Zamtel has commissioned 2 communication towers in Kanyama and Penjebele area of Msanzala constituency in Petauke district of Eastern Province. Speaking when he officiated at the launch, Msanzala Member of Parliament Peter Daka says the towers will help alleviate the communication challenges the people in the area have been facing. Mr. Daka says the launch of the communication towers will also help school-going children with access to internet in schools for research purposes.
Today, a cell phone is so addictive that we choose not to buy cooking oil because we want to buy talk time for 2 kwacha. We choose to buy a cell phone even when our children have not been, school fees has not been paid because a cell phone is addictive. This is not wrong. We want to stop urban or rural migration to the urban area. This can only be achieved by bringing facilities like this tower here. Universal access, for which His Excellency the President, Mr. Edgar Chagwalungu, has promised now and then is being fulfilled. These programs are not for Verinas Moyo. These programs are not for Peter Daka. These programs are designed to satisfy the people of Zambia, which the President.
Speaking at the same launch, Zamtel Chief Commercial Officer Kenneth Sinkamba says Zamtel considers Eastern Province as one of the priority areas due to its immense economic potential. Mr. Sinkamba says the additional sites being taken to the Eastern Province will play a critical role in contributing to the socio-economic development of the province through reliable communication, empowerment opportunities, and job creation. And Chief Nyampande of the Senga-speaking people in Petauke district has advised the people in the 2 areas to guard against the vandalism of the towers.
So far, this project has delivered over 500 new sites spread out in different parts of the country, with a further 300 planned for completion before the end of the year. In Eastern Province alone, we have so far added 46 new sites on the network, and we plan to add another 60, thereby increasing the access to communication to some of the most remote parts of our country. In this regard, the site we are launching here this morning is one of the 8 which have been switched on in Petauke district. We plan to erect a further 9 in this beautiful district, which will push the total number to 17.
Ndipolo mwewe amene ngati kuna zovuta kulimaliro mukuti mchite communicate chezovuta lomba chiti pepukire ngako so mwa icho ntoyamikira ngako ipo noziva kuti mwasalako salako mukali ofuika network aza tikire mosoti nakuti lomba pawe pali ponse pola yoli kuminga walwala kwala usakira thandizo nikungochita foni era kali ni transport yofunikira kali njinga muntu wawera kuzotola matenda.
To end the news, we recap on stories making headlines. The increase in minimum prices has resulted in the annual rate of inflation for the month of August increasing to 9.3%. And government has signed a $3.8 million United States memorandum of understanding with the United Nations Development Program on the creation of a conducive governance environment. On that note, we end the news. Pleasant viewing.